Hi, everybody, and welcome backstage here at the Geraldo Studios. You know that sort of pleasant anticipation, that feeling you get when you're about to see an old friend you haven't seen for a while? Well, that's what I'm experiencing right now because one of our very special guests today is an old friend of mine, John Denver. Come on in, John.
Hey, Brad. Good to see you. How's it going? How are the kids? How's Zachary and Anna Kate?
They're just great, getting big.
How big? How old are they now?
Zach is 15, will be 16 later this month. Anna Kate is 13.
Man, time flies, huh?
Yeah, they're
You have a brand new one, too?
And a brand new baby girl, 11 months old.
You know, in the 17 years that we've known each other, I should fill in a little. John, in 1973, did a benefit concert for me in Madison Square Garden to help raise funds for the mentally retarded. He's been involved in a million causes. One of the main causes he's involved in now is, of course, the environment. You think the world's better off now or worse off than it was 17 years ago?
Well, I think it's worse off in the conditions that we're facing, but I think it's better off in our awareness of those conditions and the realization that we have to start doing something about it.
So you think there's hope that the little one will have a cleaner world than the teenagers are experiencing right now?
I'll certainly do everything that I can possibly do to assure that, yes.
You know, one of our other very special guests, Olivia Newton-John. You want to say hello?
Hi, Olivia.
Hi.
We just spoke on the phone.
Did you? Hi, honey. How you doing? Welcome to the program.
Hi, Thank
Now
you.
you have, how old is Chloe? How old is she?
Chloe is 4.
You know, as a mom, what scares you the most about the environment?
Everything. The pollution. I mean, I just want her to have clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, and clean food to eat. The basic 3 problems that we all are facing. And I think her birth brought an incredible awareness to me of the problems of the world. And I, like John, want to do everything I can do to solve it.
One thing I wonder about, you know, we 3 have the personal resources, and you come from such a beautiful, clean, big country. To go away from the danger, away from the dirt, or away from the toxins and the pollutants, why don't you just do that? Run off in some beautiful ranch in Australia someplace?
There is no escape. I used to think that, actually, when I was not as educated as to what's going on. I used to think that, you know, I could go to Australia and get away from it. But the truth is that the world is a very small place, and everybody's garbage lands up on your doorstep eventually. So we all have to help each other. We're all part of one planet. We have to help clean up our own backyard in order to help next door. So there's really no escape, and I don't want to escape. I want to help.
Okay, great. Olivia Newton-John, John Denver, parents all seeing the praises and of the perils of the planet. That is the special focus of this edition of Geraldo. Let's start right out. Ladies and gentlemen, John Denver. Come on out, John. You, of course, know John best for his movies and his songs, but for the last 20 years, he has been working to save the planet. And to that end, to heighten awareness and concern, John has established the WinStar Foundation, and he's recently released an album of Earth songs sold exclusively through the National Wildlife Federation. And joining us via satellite from Los Angeles, Olivia Newton-John, ladies and gentlemen. The actress and award-winning performer has been named the Goodwill Ambassador of the Environment to the United Nations. And her latest album is Warm and Tender. It's a collection of love songs and lullabies, and we'll hear some of that album in just a few minutes. Now, John and Olivia are with us today to celebrate what is fast becoming the best-known, most significant anniversary on this planet. Celebrated now in 135 countries by about 100 million people, Sunday is, of course, the 20th anniversary of Earth Days. And our 2 stars will be joined later in this program by a host of experts here to help us sort out the planet's new facts of life. Now, Olivia, it must be quite an honor to be the Goodwill Ambassador on behalf of the environment to the United Nations. What do you do with the other ambassadors? Do you lobby for the environment?
I'm really the first ambassador for the environment, so I haven't met any of the other ones yet. I think there's going to be some more. But basically, it's to talk about them and what they represent and to go to functions and draw media attention, if I can, to the problems of the world.
Do you think that with all the attention the environment gets during this day or so of, you know, Earth Day recognition, that it will make a difference?
Yes, I think it will, because I think once you open your eyes, you can never close them again. I mean, once you find out about the problems, you can't help but notice everything else. And I think that people are becoming very aware of what's going on. And I think people, once they become aware, will want to help. So I think it will make a difference, yes.
Aside from concern, John, do you ever feel anger? One place we have both visited extensively, Alaska. I know that you went after the Exxon Valdez dumped millions of barrels of oil onto that beautiful, up until that time, pristine shore. Does that really get your dander up?
Yes, I get angry, and I was never more angry in my life than I was when I was on the shore of Prince William Sound.
I mean, how do you react when you look at all that wildlife, the birds, the fish just washed up, the seals, just dead, oil popping off them?
I didn't actually see that. I was there several months after the accident, and although there were not dead animals lying around and pools of oil, all of the rocks were covered with a film of oil, and no matter how deeply you dug down on the beach, there was still oil there. And we went to beaches that had not yet been treated and saw this, and we went to a beach that Exxon had treated not once, but twice. And although on the surface there was not this film, the rocks were only discolored as far as the high tide line from the oil. If you dug down 6 inches a foot, there was that oil, and it's turning into asphalt, tar turning into asphalt. And I have friends up in Alaska who talked about all the oil that was spilt during the Second World War, and they said, hey, some of those beaches are starting to come back. That was 40 years ago. So it's it truly is a sin, what happened, and it need not have happened, and it should never happen again, and we need to make sure that these guys are doing something about it.
Well, the oil companies told us it would never happen. Did they lie?
Well, yes, they lied. They lied when they said it would never happen. They lied when they said that if it does happen, we're prepared and able and will do something about it, and they're lying now when they say they've handled it.
So what can you do, though, to a company like Exxon? What can you do to some of these big multinational petroleum-based companies?
Well, one of the things the National Wildlife Federation and I are doing is they're going down and having a press conference before Exxon's annual board meeting later on this month. And they're going to give the results that they've had from the citizen hearings that they've held up in Alaska and other places where there are the danger of or there has been accidents with oil spillage. And they're going to do that down there at the place where they're having their board meeting. We're also going to show this video and the song that I wrote from that experience, which I think I get to do later on here. And I'm going to try to send a copy of it to every member of the board. I want Rawl out of there.
Get him. You want
I'm going to get him.
Okay.
You heard it, Mr. Rawl. Another wonderful place that I had the good fortune in my career as a journalist to visit were the rainforests in Brazil. And I remember seeing the fresh-cut roads and gold miners, you know, kind of swarming over those hills. And everybody who could carry a pick or a shovel or an axe, it seemed to me, was there in the Amazon carving that beautiful place up in search of valuable minerals, one thing or another. Is it too late, Olivia?
Not if we stop it soon. It won't be too late, but it's being burned up at an incredibly alarming rate. I flew over it in a helicopter, and the huge clear-cutting that's going on is really frightening, especially because the forest will not come back. Once it's been cut down and burnt, the ecosystem is so fragile that it won't reseed and it won't come back again, so this land will eventually turn to desert.
Why should we care about a faraway forest in another country?
Because these forests affect the climate of the planet. It has an effect way beyond just in Brazil. I mean, America has the problem too. We're cutting down our forests here. We're cutting down forests all over the world. It's not just Brazil. This problem is worldwide. We have to do something about it. We're losing species every minute. We're losing species. We're losing plant life, which could give us answers to medical problems. Maybe the cure for AIDS is in the forest, and we're cutting them down. So there are a lot of reasons we have to put an end to it.
Is it too late, do you think? Is this environmental movement? I want to ask both John and Olivia the question. Are we getting on this bandwagon too late? Has this ship already sailed? Is it too late for this old planet of ours, Olivia?
I don't think we can think that way. I think you have to have a positive outlook in order to make things happen. And everybody, because if everyone sits back and says, oh, it's too late, then we are doomed. We're definitely doomed. But if we have a positive outlook and we believe that we can make the changes, we will. You have to believe that.
What do you think, buddy?
Depending on who you talk to, they say that in the next 10 years, or within at least the next 40 years, we will determine whether or not the Earth is able to sustain human life. One of the things that goes along with that, you know, on one hand, we have time to begin. We have to start now, and it's that critical. We are an endangered species. On the other hand, there are situations like the ozone layer, the process that allows the activity that goes on with fluorochlorocarbons and carbon dioxide to get up and eat ozone is a process that takes 40 years. So the damage that we're experiencing now is the result of what began at the turn of the century. And we will not, if we were to stop right now with everything that we're doing that is a catalyst for the depletion of the ozone layer, it's going to get worse for 40 years. Now, a lot of people don't know that if there was a specific catalyst to life coming out of the oceans and being able to survive on the land, it was the creation of ozone. And if we lose that, we're either going to have to go back into the ocean or build, you know, shells over our heads to be able to continue to survive. And that's not the only problem.
You know, do we risk, Olivia, scaring people away from this issue because it's so vast?
I was scared in the beginning. I was kind of very frightened because I didn't know what I could do. But I think we have to be positive and tell people there are simple things that you can do, little things that you do in your everyday life that will make changes. I mean, you don't expect.
I want to list a lot of those little things today because I want this to be a practical program. But John, you mentioned the song, Raven's Song, right?
Raven's
that you
Child.
wrote. Tell me about Raven's.
Well, when we were up in Prince William Sound, we happened to see one of many boats in the area that where they were supposedly skimming oil off the surface of the water. And one of these boats was called Raven's Child. And I thought in fact, it was Jay Hare who said that's the name of a song. So we did some research and we found out that the raven, in all Aboriginal cultures, is not only known as a trickster and a prankster, but is also considered to be the source, the one who brought the spirit from heaven to earth. And so Raven's Child is us, human beings. And what I wanted to do with the catalyst of the accident that had occurred in my experience in Prince William Sound was to relate it to other things that are going on in our world that are the same kind of thing, and to really point out the necessity of us, you know, making some hard choices and looking at some of these wolves in sheep's clothing directly in the eye and calling a spade a spade.
John Denver will sing Raven's Child in 2 minutes when we come back. Enormity. Enormity is a good word when it comes to the problems of the environment. Now, do you think it's just too big?
I think not only is it too big, but we attack it as a big problem. We don't attack it as a small problem on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute, person-to-person basis. We have things like the World Trade Center being built that dumps thousands and thousands of gallons of raw sewage a day. How could it get a building permit? How can it go on? How can it continue?
What do you think? Are you pessimistic then?
I'm optimistic, but with great reservation.
Oh, I sound like a politician. John, the enormity question.
Well, the thing is to remember that you don't have to do everything, but there is something that you can do. Excuse me. And each one of these little steps is a contribution. Each one of these is a pebble in the pond. And pretty soon what has been like a mirror is going to be so stirred up that it reflects nothing except what we are accomplishing as we move forward. Do the thing that you can do. You can make a world of difference.
Okay, and I'm going to stress, there's a best-selling book now, 50 Simple Things That You Can Do to Make the World a Better Place. But right now, one of the things we can all do is listen to John singing Raven's Child. Would you?
Raven's child is chasing salvation. Black feet turn white from the crack and the snow. On the streets of despair, the answer is simple. A spoonful of mercy can set free the soul. The drug king sits on his arrogant throne, away and above and apart. Even children are twisted to serve him. Greed has corrupted what once was a heart. Raven's child keeps vigil for freedom, trades for the arms that once made her strong. With nuclear warheads and lasers in heaven, feared of the choosing between right and wrong. The arms king sits on his arrogant throne, away and above and apart. Bankers assured him he needn't care. Greed makes a stone of what once was a heart. silence what once was a heart. Still there are walls that come tumbling down for people who yearn to be free. Still there are hearts that long to be open and eyes that are longing to see. Prayer's child is our constant companion, sticks like a shadow to all that is done. Try as we may, we just can't escape him, the source of our sorrow and shame. We are one. The tree sits on a heavenly throne, never away nor above nor apart. With wisdom and mercy, constant compassion, he lives in the love that lives in our hearts. Raven's child is watching the water. Raven's child keeps vigil for freedom. Raven's child chasing salvation. Raven's child is our constant companion.
What a great song. A great song. Are you inspired as a songwriter by the scope of the cause?
Well, you know, it has been so much a part of my music for the entirety of my career. And at times it gets more focused, and certainly this was one of those occasions. And absolutely, you know, there are some hard scenes in that video, but they need to be addressed. That's the reality of what we're dealing with, and we have to, you know, we have to begin acting like adults and dealing with these things.
You know, Olivia, do you speak on the issue of the environment as an expert or as a parent?
I'm definitely not an expert, and I don't have a lot of facts and figures at hand, but I'm a concerned mother and citizen of this planet, and that's really where my heart is.
Was there one thing that happened to you, one catalyst that got you involved in this issue? So many issues out there to be involved with or concerned about.
I was involved in the environment a long time ago. I was involved with the dolphin issue, and I'm absolutely thrilled that the tuna people have decided to stop killing the dolphins. I think it's wonderful. So it just shows you people power does work, and I was advocating boycotting tuna. So that's one thing I started out with. But then when my daughter was born 4 years ago, suddenly I realized I was responsible for this little person, and I looked around at the mess we were making and realized, my goodness, I have to do something. I have to speak out, and I've always been kind of pretty quiet on political issues, but I feel this is beyond that, and I think anybody who can get access to talking to people must do it. And so I feel it's, you know, my calling, so to speak.
Who mucks up the planet worse? Is it the Republicans or the Democrats?
I think we're all equally responsible, all around the world, you know, and there's an exciting thing happening also, is that now that the Iron Curtain is lifting, the eastern countries who are having incredible pollution problems, much worse than even we are having, are now going to get the opportunity to get our expertise and help clean up their part of the world. And it needs all of us to get together, basically.
We mentioned Mr. Rawls from Exxon, but the tuna companies did come through, didn't they? They are now offering
and they deserve applause,
dolphinless
right?
tuna. It's chicken of the sea. I don't want to mess up the companies. I'm going to go do some instant research in this commercial break. I'll be able to praise those three companies by name, I promise you. We're going to bring out our experts, talk much more with John Denver and Olivia Newton-John. And I want Bumblebee, Starkist, and Chicken of the Sea. Those are the tuna companies that now pledge dolphin-free tuna fishing. Your question.
Yes, I've heard about programs around the country. I know there's one in New York with NEW, I think, and it was recently something on Indiana or somewhere of a school where they're buying up tropical rainforest for like $30 an acre. And I'd like to know if there's more programs around the country and how effective that may be, because it seems pretty inexpensive.
Let me ask Olivia Newton-John, do you know anything about private efforts to buy up the endangered rainforest, Olivia?
I've heard about it, but I don't know of the name of the programs, I'm afraid.
Okay, it
But I
sounds
do
like
know
a great
about
idea, sort of a...
It is a great idea.
As a new grandmother, I would like to know if there's anything that I can do to secure my grandson's future in this universe.
Everything that you do plays a role in that. Every decision you make, every choice you make, the way that you spend your money, the way that you live every day, the kind of things you expose your grandchildren and your children to. Everything that you can do, look for ways to show your concern for their life, for their future, and for our Earth.
I just wanted to know, I remember in the mid-70s, they started with the ozone layers deteriorating, and I remember running and switching deodorants, going to the pumps and non-aerosols. Why is there such a denial about what's going on? And don't people care? And it's not consistent enough.
I think that part of what makes it so there for us now is that people all over the world, and certainly all over this country, have started to experience in their own lives the deterioration of the environment in one way or another. It happens economically. It happens with what's going on for farmers, certainly. In Santa Barbara, California, they're having to truck in water now. We're looking at drought conditions from the lack of snow in Colorado this year. So things are happening, and they're not usual, and they're going to keep on happening. The exaggeration has been with those who say, well, we don't know enough yet. You know, that's based on scientists, and what a scientist has to do to say that something is a scientific truth is they want to be 90 to 95% sure, right? And in that realm, they'll say, this is happening. Well, what if it's 50-50 that the Earth is going to warm up 6 degrees in the next 100 years? That is, that's faster than, it's 1,000 times faster than at any time in history. You know, and who knows what will occur with that going on.
Beaches in Arizona, that's
it's 50-50, you know, so what are you going to do? If it's 50-50, you're going to get run over by a car. Are you going to step out in front of the street?
Not me. Let me introduce our expert panelists right now. With Olivia out in Los Angeles, that's Bonnie Reese. Bonnie is the founder of ECHO, the media's environmental group. Here in our New York studios, meet Chris Dresser. She's the executive director of Earth Day 1990, with Earth Day's special edition of 50 simple things you can do to save the Earth that I'm going to talk about. Old friend John Robbins, who tells us we can help the environment by watching what we eat. John is the author of the Pulitzer Prize-nominated Diet for a New America. He's also, curiously enough, aren't you the only son of the founder of Baskin & Robbins ice cream? Well, yes. That's a vegetarian, isn't it? This is Horst Rechelbecker. He's the president of the Avada Corporation. That is the first company to sign the so-called Valdez Principles. That's a statement of environmentally sound standards for business. He is also the author of Rejuvenation, a wellness guide for women and men. While Gary Peterson is a leading expert on recycling and will tell us how to set up our own little recycling center. Bonnie, let me start out on the coast. What is the media really jumping on the bandwagon because it's popular, or do you think that famous people really can make a difference in an issue like this one?
Well, I think it's clear that famous people have the ability to go out, get a lot of media attention, and through that reach hundreds of millions of people. And because, as John Denver earlier said, in fact, the scientists, the leading scientists around the world, are telling us we've got a 10-year window of opportunity left to win or lose this environmental battle, determining whether or not our planet is habitable and safe for our children. Well, we don't have time to go door to door, and therefore, through television and movies and music, we can reach hundreds of millions of people working with the experts to get the word out to everyone, what they can do to make a difference so we can accelerate the pace of this badly needed environmental movement.
You mentioned music. I want to offer to our audience this little extra aid of the traction. You'll hear from Olivia Newton-John's wonderful, sweet voice in a moment. We have to take a break, and then we'll go on and ask people like Chris. You have the EPA now. You never had that before. On the first Earth Day, 1970, we have the Clean Air Act. There are certain things moving, it would seem, in the right direction. I want to ask you about that as soon as we take a commercial break, and then listen to Olivia's song, and then we'll talk about some of the good news and some of the things we can all do at home. Stay with us. Be right back.
So far.
He's so popular, and yet he really hasn't done that environmental promise. He seems to be doing so well, at least insofar as the polls show, in so many areas, and yet in the environment, you really haven't seen President Bush stepping up to the plate yet.
Well, I hope that people are going to start calling him on it, because I don't think he's going to be able to get away with the rhetoric or the lip service if he doesn't
didn't he
do
make
anything.
the EPA chief, the administrator, or a cabinet member?
Not yet. He has not made Bill Riley a cabinet member just yet, and seems to be listening increasingly to John Sununu, who is emerging as the James Watt of the Bush administration.
James Watt, remember him, Secretary of the Interior? They gave him the foot that he was always putting in his mouth, the big bronze foot. I'm going to give you a couple of these throughout the show. From the Earthworks Group, this is the #1 national bestseller, 50 Simple Things You Can Do to Save the Earth. Stop junk mail. Well, that sounds like a pretty good one to me. I hate the stuff. Gary, what about stopping junk mail? What? Stopping junk mail. Why not?
You can stop it by writing to the distributors that send the stuff to you, or we can recycle it. But it's better to source, reduce, and cut down what you're using, rather than go. That's the first step. Then if you can't, go to the recycling mode.
Stamp out styrofoam. I hate that
Stamp
stuff.
out styrofoam.
The question is when we stamp out the styrofoam, and what do we use in place of that? And that's paper. Paper comes from trees. We just started a program in Santa Monica to recycle the styrofoam, and it's a long process.
Recycled styrofoam? I'd never.
Yeah,
heard
we're
of
making flower pots out of it. So it can be recycled. The thing is that we've got to think beyond just reacting, and we got to think beyond our nose. And what's the impact of what we do, long range?
Chris, make it a royal flush.
You can put devices in your toilets that help save water, which would make a huge difference in New York, for example, where there's water conservation problems, in California, where we're facing a drought, in Colorado.
Is it true that 40% of the fresh water in many areas is flushed down the toilet?
Absolutely, and we can't afford to do that, as increasingly our fresh water is contaminated by pesticides used in gardening and farming.
You know, John Robbins, I had done stories on the overuse of antibiotics in cattle. It seemed pretty alarming that they were being medicated at a huge rate, it seemed to me, a regular basis, right?
That's right.
Every single day, and I wondered if they were going to get immune to the antibiotics in the same way a human would if he or she was taking it every single day along with their
Well, that's what's
food.
happened. Over half the antibiotics that are produced in the United States are not used as medicines for people. They're actually used as feed additives in the factory farms, and they have to be used because the conditions there are so appalling and so stressful for the animals that otherwise, without the antibiotics mixed into every dose of feed, they'll die, and there's no profit in a dead animal.
Just think of this. I bet that you never thought of this. There are no flush toilets or sewers in any cattle ranch for all the, you know, the feces, etc., from the cattle, and yet their excrement is going into the rivers and ponds, and it's far more than the human stuff, right?
It's vastly more. The livestock of the United States actually produce almost 20 times more excrement than the population. And it does end up in our water a lot. And that's why, you know, we're told to think globally. These problems are severe. And then we think, well, what can I do? Not to feel overwhelmed and to make a difference. And one of the things we can do to act locally is on the food on our plates. Because when we reduce the amount of beef we eat, we reduce the amount of excrement in the water.
Olivia tried being a strict vegetarian for a while. She's not quite so strict now, but she has cut down severely on her meat consumption. She'll tell us about her new diet. John will tell us the implications of that. Gary, I want you to show me some of that recycled stuff. Right. And Horst, I want you to tell me about your Aveda Corporation. Is that the right pronunciation?
Yes.
The first company in this country to sign the Valdez Principles, and if there were many, many more like him, the problem would be a lot less severe. Nice name, too, Valdez Principles, named, of course, after the Exxon Valdez, the worst environmental disaster maybe in our history, certainly insofar as water and wild animal pollution. Be right back. Give us 2 minutes. The only vegetarian I knew in college, at that time, of course, it wasn't as popular as it is now, a guy named Sid, I remember, he seemed to me to be a little on the scrawny side. Is that an old wives' tale? Is that obsolete, that kind of vision of vegetarianism?
Well, I think that we eat too much fat in our diet, especially in America. We eat a lot of fat in our dairy products and in our meat products, and if you reduce your fat consumption, you're going to get lean, but lean is healthy. Look at John Robbins. He's a very healthy man. He's a marathon runner. And his book really changed my thinking on eating habits a lot. And
Diet for a New America?
Diet for a New America. It's a wonderful book.
Did you have polio at one time, John?
Yes, I did as a child.
Do you think that you cured it with nutrition?
I think it helped.
And now you went from a polio victim to a marathoner?
Yes, and a triathlete.
Wow, that's surprising. My favorite restaurant on the planet is Wally's. It's a steak joint on West 49th Street, just a couple of blocks away from here. But I go there less now because I eat red meat less. But the reason I've chosen to cut down on meat consumption is that I saw my cholesterol level begin creeping toward 200. And my dad passed away from heart disease at the age of 72, and I wanted, I'm a relatively fit person. I wanted to stay that way. Is that another beneficial side effect?
It's wonderful to watch your blood cholesterol levels get healthier. My uncle Bert Baskin died of a heart attack about 20 years ago.
Eating all that ice cream.
Yeah, it was part of it. and the amazing thing is what's best for our bodies is best for our planet in a very substantial and breathtaking way. For every person who shifts from a typical American diet to a totally vegetarian diet, they spare an acre of trees. There's less carbon dioxide released, less fossil fuels burned, less methane comes off, the greenhouse effect is slowed down. The less meat we eat, the greener the world will be, the less polluted it will be. It's a fabulous byproduct of what makes us healthy.
But John Denver, what about all those family farmers out there raising steers? Shouldn't we be concerned about them too?
Well, yes, we should be concerned about them, and we have to change some things. We have to change many of the ways that we live, and there will be sacrifice in some areas, but there are things that we must do. You know, the people whose primary job is raising steers, there's other things they can do.
Geraldo?
Yeah, Olivia.
If people of America reduce their meat consumption by 10%, the millions of tons of grain that is saved could feed everybody that's starving in the world. That is the fact. And 10% to reduce your meat consumption is not very hard to do.
Wow.
And Geraldo?
Go ahead, Bonnie.
Just like we have to deal with the people that are producing steers, we also have to deal with the people that are working in the coal mines and in the oil fields, because we as a society are approaching a time where we're going to have to shift over to a saner, healthier way of living. And it doesn't mean being insensitive to those people that are working in those things that are going to be obsolete in the future, but we must consider ways of moving ahead. You know, John Denver in a song earlier said it all. It really is greed replacing the heart. Are we going to feel that as a people it's more important to put aside greed and self-interest and realize our interdependence on one another and realize that we must, above all else, leave a healthy planet for our children? The Indians have a statement, when we walk upon the earth, we walk upon the faces of our unborn children. And if we as a people can realize how all our actions added times 260 million Americans and 5 billion people on the planet have been responsible for the problem, but also can solve the problem, it's a very empowering feeling.
I saw with great interest a survey in the New York Times recently that said that a majority of the American people would favor a clean environment, even if it meant economic dislocation and at least temporary unemployment. I mean,
I favor that.
I mean, that's a tremendous thing. Now, Horst, I want you to tell me about your company before we run out of time. Gary's going to show us some of those recycled stuff. I'm going to read a couple more of the 50 simple things you can do to save the planet, but I have to take another break. Stay with us.
Address the real issue on, why do we have pollution? You see, instead of treating, we have to treat the cause, not the symptoms. And the cause is petroleum production. I mean, we are making everything out of petroleum today: shampoos, detergents, clothing, fabrics, paint. You name it, is made from petroleum. Packaging. And trees, plants in particular, are environmental wonders. And we can make everything from that. And that's what we have to do. And not just the plants have to, it's the best food, it's the best cosmetic, it's best for the body, it's best for the planet. And that's what we have to become, a plant society. And not just we have to grow the plants, we have to grow the plants healthy, without insecticides, without pesticides, without petroleum.